Hey, gang, it's me, Dr. Steve. And as many of you know, this channel is dedicated to following civilizationalist and populist trends all over the world. We followed very closely the recent European Parliament elections, where the nationalist populists took 25% of the seats. And we're keeping an equally close eye on the consequential elections coming up in France and Austria that promise to swing those nations further to the right. However, just days from now, something even more extraordinary is about to happen in the UK. While the rest of the world seems to be turning to the right in some way, shape, or form, Britain, if you can believe it, looks poised to turn overwhelmingly to the political left. All the polls show that the Tories, the Conservatives, are about to get absolutely decimated. And my guest today, himself a staunch conservative, is here to tell us why that's actually a really good thing. I'm joined today by Dan Tubb. Dan is a former venture capitalist who now podcasts for the Lotus Eaters and has the weekly show Brokenomics, looking at our broken economic and political systems. We will definitely want to all subscribe to Dan's channels. I got the links down below so that you can secure your front row seat on the lead up to and the aftermath of these very consequential and unprecedented elections. Dan, welcome. Great to see you again, my friend.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed having you on my show recently. So, yes, delighted to be back with you.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you. And, we were just talking a few weeks back. I mean, how times have changed since we talked. I mean, who would have ever thought that
Yes,
up until...
did we talk before reform was reheaded
before
by
Nigel came out? If I recall,
Ah.
it was before Nigel announced and reform started to surge. That's
Mm.
right. I mean, it was a relatively sleeper election.
Oh, yes.
And then it just got startled awake for the whole world to see with the return of Nigel Farage and the subsequent surge for the Reform Party. I don't know if we could exaggerate for our audience just how unprecedented these upcoming elections are in Britain. On July, as we were talking, on July the 4th of all dates, very fascinating, on Thursday.
Yeah, and I'm just glad that we've got something interesting to talk about, because this election, like you said, it wasn't sleeper. It was comfortably the most boring election of my lifetime. It was just going to be this sort of procedural matter where power shifted from the red team to the blue team. I wouldn't even characterise it as a shift from left to right, because basically the Conservative Party is a left-wing party.
It's the same thing.
It's probably to the left of the Labour Party at this point.
Wow.
So so this was going to be of no interest to us whatsoever. And
Wow.
then Nigel Farage appeared back on the scene, and he's shaken up the dynamic entirely.
It is astonishing, and he did it. Went back in, when was it? May of. Yeah, I'm thinking. Well, I'm thinking even the precedent of the last European elections you guys had I thought was 2019, if I recall, and he started the Brexit party like 5 weeks before the European elections, right? April, May of 2019, and then it turned out 1 out of every 3 Brits ended up voting for the Brexit party.
He won a national election. Yeah, I mean, it was for the European Parliament, so it wasn't for our Parliament,
right?
The European,
exactly.
But nevertheless,
right.
it was a nationwide election, and he won it. So clearly, the guy has got some political chops. Yeah,
he is a disruptor for sure. Dan, give us just a sense of where the polls are right now, just so we just kind of frame this about a week out. Where are the polls right now? What can we expect to happen on election day?
So the polls are a little bit more complicated than perhaps they are on the other side of the pond, because while we kind of are a two-party system, we're kind of effectively more of a 2.5-party system. So we've got the Labour Party, we've got the Conservative Party, who can serve nothing, by the way, apart from the gains of the previous Labour governments. That's the only thing they can serve. And then we've got the Liberal Democrats. So it's more like a 2.5-party system. Mm-hmm. Now, the Liberal Democrats are essentially for people who don't have strong opinions but feel that they should be voting anyway. So they position themselves as an alternative to Labour in the north of the country, and they position themselves as an alternative to the Conservatives in the south of the country. And before Nigel came back into the scene, we were probably looking at the Labour getting something in the mid-40s as a share of the vote, The Conservatives doing very badly on probably the low 20s, and then the Liberal Democrats getting there like 12, 13%, whatever they got. What we've got now is a kind of another half party, which is maybe a bit more than a half party. Reform has come back into it. I mean, Reform had been around for a while, but they were kind of irrelevant and the reason they're irrelevant is because Nigel Farage set up the party and then he stepped away and he started doing GB News and he started having his media career.
He started coming over here half the time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that was probably a big factor in why Rishi Sunak decided to have the election now, because he thought, okay, what was happening is you were getting insurgent parties appearing on the left. You had George Galloway, who is he's a bit of a one-man man, but he's an excellent speaker. He has that sort of statesman-like quality. So he was starting to inroad on the uniparty from the left, and it looked like that Nigel Farage was going to be out of the picture because he was saying, "I'm going to go to America and I'm going to help out Trump and do the campaign and stuff like that." So it looked to be safe to go now before the uniparty was attacked from the left. What actually happened was after the election was called, Nigel Farage made that return, and I'll speak more about what I think kind of went into coming back, and it's going to throw the polls into disarray. So now what you've got is it looks like Labour are probably still going to win this election, but they're going to win with a lower share of the vote than Jeremy Corbyn. So they're going to win with a lower share of the vote than Jeremy Corbyn lost in 2017.
Wow.
So this is one of the key points I want to get across to your viewers is in a week's time or a couple of weeks' time, if you hear on the news that Labour have done incredibly well and they've won this big victory, that's not the case. Their vote share has not gone up, it's gone down.
Wow.
What's happened is the Conservative Party have betrayed their voters one too many times and they have imploded. And now we've got this alternative with Reform, and it looks like Reform are probably going to get more votes than the Conservatives.
Unbelievable.
Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to get more seats. It's extraordinary. It doesn't mean they're going to get more seats because we have a constituency-based parliamentary system. We've got 650 seats, all based around large market towns, or the cities will be subdivided into regions. And it's a first-past-the-post basis on each of those. And what has happened over the last 100 years or so is there's been that sort of sorting mechanism where you kind of get concentration of voters. So basically, if you've got a large garden, you vote Conservative. If you live in the countryside, something like that. And if you witness knife crime outside your house, you probably vote Labour because you're in the city. Right. Reform have come along and their popularity is much more evenly spread, which means that they can come second in an awful lot of places. So they might only get a handful of seats, but if they get more, it will break the spell.
Right.
And people will realise that actually, no, there is a right-wing alternative. I mean, a lot of people haven't fully realised that the Conservatives are not actually right-wing, but it will break the spell. So we are pushing what we are calling the zero seats campaign in this election, but then our meme lords are already hard at work on the double tap strategy that we're going to be pushing out after this, which is, okay, one shot to get the Tories down, next one in the back of the head, and then you can have this resurgent right-wing party that actually represents right-wing concerns.
Are you using mafia imagery there?
We use whatever tool for the job.
Yeah. Whatever gets it done. That's right. You have got to click on that link below and treat yourself and your family and friends to the most amazing soap I've ever tried, made by our good friends over at Old Country Soap. Made on a farm in South Dakota using traditional techniques. They use only locally sourced special ingredients without the harsh chemicals that can dry out your hair and skin. Every bar includes pure and unfiltered bentonite clay that works wonders. It helps to soothe and relieve dry and sensitive skin. It's known for its healing properties that help with psoriasis and eczema. It also pulls dirt and oil out from your pores, helping to clear up acne. I mean, it's amazing. It works great for hair. You could use it to shave. It's safe for pets. The scent alone is worth it. And of course, on top of all that, it's made right here in the USA. Use promo code Turley for an exclusive 20% discount off your order, and every order will include an extra gift. Just pay the shipping. It's more than worth it. You're going to love it. So go ahead, treat yourself, reward yourself with this amazing Patriot product. You will not be disappointed. Click on that link below right now. Give our listeners a sense of this who are not necessarily familiar with the UK. When they think Tories, when they think the Conservatives, they think Margaret Thatcher, they think Winston Churchill. They think one of the most objectively the single most successful political party probably of all in the West for well over a century. What happened to them? How did it end up where literally in a week, it looks like they're going to meet their demise? I don't know. I've read different accounts. Some have said, well, we've been here before in 1920 or whatever. This looks pretty decisively dire for the Tories. What happened to them? What happened to this once really epitome of Western parties?
Well, I mean, they ceased to. Well, I say they ceased. The true answer is that the Tory party have betrayal in their DNA. You can take the roots back a lot further than 100 years. I mean, the party was really sort of established in 1689, and wow. It was a monarchist faction supporting King James. Now, of course, the first thing they did was betray King James, and they have betrayed their supporters consistently throughout their history. So the next big betrayal would have been repeal of the Corn Law. So their support base would have been the landowners, the farmers. And in, I think, 1856, I might be getting that wrong, but something around that time, they repealed the Corn Laws and betrayed their voters then. And they've done that ever since. More recently, the betrayal has always been over Europe. Obviously, we like to think we've got a bit of pluck, the British. I mean, we historically, we've done quite well for ourselves. I think we've invaded every country apart from Bolivia and Liechtenstein. And just for anyone who's listening from Bolivia, I would like to apologise for the oversight. You're missing out on all that beautiful colonial architecture and an efficient railway system. But hopefully we can get around to you in a resurgent future. But we've got a bit of pluck. But clearly, the two world wars were horrendous for us. They absolutely destroyed what was once a great empire, and we're sort of left on the other side of that now. And there was a view in the establishment that we were too small to be an independent power, and a lot of them was coming at this. This was a time of US domination, and they felt to avoid being sucked into effectively being what we actually have become, which is a vassal state of US
basically a colony.
Exactly. The colonization has gone the other way. Right. They wanted to immerse us into Europe, but that doesn't sit right with us. We don't want Frenchmen making our laws. I mean, we don't mind going to war with them, but we're not having them telling us what the regulatory size for chocolate boxes are, or whatever it is. So that was a big split, and they betrayed us multiple times over moving us closer and closer into Europe, which we didn't want. So this split persisted for a long time. But what really triggered the destruction of the Tory party was the election of David Cameron in 2005 to become Tory leader. Now, there was a choice back then. It was a choice between David Davis, who was a proper Tory, an ex-SAS soldier. That was the guy that I voted for. But then we had David Cameron, and he got in largely on the back of the fact that he had nice hair. Yeah. And so he got the female vote, and the low T males also sort of went for that. I'm not necessarily saying that women shouldn't vote, but draw your own conclusions.
That's a different video. We'll talk about that's the next interview.
we can circle back to that, like they say. And what David Cameron did is he was looking at Tony Blair. Tony Blair was, of course, in his absolute ascendancy this time. Now, for my money, Tony Blair is the best politician I have ever seen.
He was amazing, no question.
This is not to say he's the politician that I like the most.
Right.
Obviously, I prefer Ron Paul or Bukele or Viktor Orban. Those are the characters that I like. But in terms of political skill that I admire is Tony Blair. Now, Tony Blair was extremely clever, because what he understood is that the point of political power is to buy more power. Mm-hmm. So every time he achieved power, he used it to get more power.
Right.
So what he did is he re-engineered the British Constitution, and effectively he took all the functions of government that he could out of government and put them in, Quango's bodies. I mean, Bank of England would be a notable example, but there are thousands of examples of this.
Right.
So you push the powers of government out to the fringes. You put your friends in charge of those bodies, and you set them up in such a way that they will always be run by your friends. Now,
Right.
this is a distinction that I think we on the right commonly misunderstand.
Wow.
Because we on the right, as soon as we get a little bit of political power, a bit of political capital, we immediately spend it. We don't
Right.
use it to then buy further power.
Right.
And this is why you get things like, build the wall is an example of this.
Yep.
We've got a bit of political capital. Let's build that wall. You give the order. It doesn't happen.
Yeah, it just it fizzles out. Yeah.
Because the mechanisms of state which you need to carry out your instructions have already been divested out to basically a collection of your enemies.
Yeah.
So you get right wings win power, and they start putting levers, and it doesn't work. Liz Truss was another example of this. She tried to lower taxes, and she was in for about 40 days. One of our shortest serving.
That long? That long? I forgot. Was it that long?
Yeah.
40 days. Yeah, it was stunning.
Yeah, extraordinary. I mean, she tried to do some relatively basic right-wing things, such as cutting taxes, and the mechanisms of state essentially ejected her. So Tony Blair was brilliant, but David Cameron admired him, but he wasn't smart enough to see what Blair was actually doing underneath the surface.
Wow.
So what Cameron did is he copied all the superficial stuff. He copied the presentational gloss that went on the top of Blair. He started moving the Conservative to the left. So all the talking points of the Conservatives started becoming left-wing talking points. We started competing on their ground. And of course, if you're competing on their political ground, you are always going to lose. And another thing that he did is he started rigging the selection process. So MPs had always been chosen by their local area. He started enforcing them from the top. And what he wanted to do is, because he was trying to replicate that superficial Blair gloss that he put on top of everything, he would take diversity candidates and push them onto very safe seats. Rishi Sunak was one of them. And he would take people with very strong social justice credentials, left-wingers basically, and put them into very strong seats, which is going to be very interesting if the Tories are reduced to only their safest seats. And maybe we can come back to that. But effectively what he did is he set up the Conservative Party from that point on to basically become another Labour Party.
Right.
And effectively from that point we were doomed, because there was only one way to go that was left. So in more recent times, I mean, in terms of what happened, that's the foundation of it. The thing that current, and people weren't particularly aware of that. I mean, those of us who are political observers, we could see this happening. We knew what was going to happen. But in terms of it entering the public consciousness, perhaps a bit like in the US, in many elections, maybe not this one, but in many elections, we tend to vote for the person that we dislike the least. We're more. It's more that we keep
lesser of two evils, as we say. Yes,
exactly. And for a long time, the Labour Party was kept out for the fear of what they would do to immigration and what they would do to tax and spend. But because the Conservative Party has been so thoroughly rotten from the inside, we were now doing mass immigration. We were also doing high tax and spend. So it got to the point where it's like, well, why should we be afraid of the Labour Party? You are doing exactly the same stuff. We might as well take the opportunity to destroy you in the hope that a new right-wing party will come along. And that was the initial conception of the Zero Seats campaign. It just got a lot more interesting when Nigel Farage then turned up, because we actually have an alternative now.
I want to talk about that Zero Seats campaign, but first, just to close this loop, because that's what I wondered, whether or not David Cameron was sort of the catalyst for this. For me, it seemed to consolidate from my observance. It seemed to consolidate with Brexit. Brexit just seemed to be that monumental event that completely upended British politics, where the old traditional voting alignments ended up just going out the window, and suddenly now most of Labour constituents are voting to get out of Brexit or get out of Europe. Most of the Tories constituents are voting to leave the European Union, but the MPs in both of those parties are all Remainers, including David Cameron, Theresa May, even Boris Johnson originally, as I understand it. What you're saying is that David Cameron, in effect, is a precursor to the because he's the one who actually called for the referendum, if I recall,
Well,
right?
he was, but he did it in order to put the issue to bed because
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
when he was prime minister, there was still some of the old school Tories around. I mean, there's still a few around today, but there's fewer and fewer because they're being selected out as time goes by. So he had this war within the parliamentary party, but also it was a popular issue. And of course, Nigel Farage was doing well, and as you talked about in the European elections. So he wanted to put the issue to bed, and he thought he'd call a referendum, and he would have the entire political establishment on his side. He would have the entire media establishment on his side, and he did. All of the newspapers, all of the news channels, every public body, almost all of the politicians are all in favour of it. So he thought this is a good way to get that issue to go away. But the people thought otherwise.
Yeah.
And then in the years following that, they desperately didn't want to do it, and they thought they could basically talk about it until we forgot about it.
Right.
And again, Nigel Farage upended those plans. So, I mean, Nigel Farage has been, even though he's never been elected to Parliament, he's tried maybe 7 times now at this point. It's very difficult to get past that two-party system in the first past the post, getting over that line. But the amount of pressure he's been able to exert on the outside has been enormous. But yes, it was Brexit that really demonstrated to everybody that it's not so much a left and right; it is a them versus us.
It's a them versus us. That's so. We talked about that when we're on that. That's right. That horizontal divide, left versus right,
exactly,
conservative versus liberals, is really breaking down. It's becoming much more vertical now. For me, my own personal interest in this. I mean, I followed so closely the December 2019 snap elections. I thought that was I was hoping it was going to be a watershed moment in UK politics, with the Conservatives just blowing out Labour with on campaigning on getting Brexit done. It was Boris Johnson's moment. I thought we covered it on our channel. I mean, this for those who don't know, this is
you and me both. Yeah.
Yeah, when Conservatives won a landslide victory we hadn't seen in a century. It was absolutely astonishing. You had parts of Britain that had never voted Conservative before. Yeah. Suddenly, there were solid Labour suddenly turning around, voting for the Conservatives to get Brexit done. What led the Tories astray? Was it Ukraine? What ended up? And how did Johnson and the Conservatives collapse so dramatically after that mandate?
I don't think it was Ukraine. No, Ukraine is something which occupies our media class and it occupies our political class, but it doesn't really have cut through, apart from the occasional idiot who puts a Ukraine flag up in their garden, not realizing that they're supporting what we know that they're supporting.
Right.
But no, I don't think that has any cut through with the people on the street. I mean, there was a number of things. Of course, when Boris Johnson came in, he did a semi-decent Brexit deal, but it wasn't great. The problem is that why did we vote for Brexit? The big issue was probably immigration. I mean, for me personally, it was sovereignty. I don't want Belgians and Frenchmen, being in charge of my laws. But for most people, it was getting immigration down. Yeah. Now, the Tories, because they've been so rotten, they looked at that and they said, Brexit is a mandate to stop all of this immigration from Poland and have 3 times as much immigration from sub-Saharan Africa. And it might not be obvious to your viewers how those cogs connected in their head, but for whatever reason, that is the lesson that the Tories took from it. So they started to rise immigration, and it's become really noticeable. I mean, it was noticeable in the sheer numbers, but it's noticeable in just walking down your high street. It is obvious to everybody that something has changed. So what was immigration? It was 1.4 million last year, 1.2 before that, 1.1. I think under the Tories since Brexit, we've had 4.6 million people coming. Now, bear in mind, we're a country of allegedly 69 million people. I don't believe those numbers.
I was going to say 60. Yeah. Okay, all right.
Yeah, but to increase by that sort of amount. And the other thing to bear in mind is that it's all being done legally. So,
Right.
I mean,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, this would be the other message I've got to your
Yeah.
viewers is please don't think that you won the battle if you build the wall and you stop the illegal immigration,
Right.
because they can just do it legally. They just put them
Right.
on planes. It's a little bit more hassle, but they can do it. If the state wants them, they will find a way. In fact, they tried to pull the wool over our eyes in this country with illegal immigration, because we get these boats turning up. So basically, you
Mhm.
get these people coming from sub-Saharan Africa. They arrive on the north coast of France, and then they take a dinghy across, and that is what all of the headlines and all of the political class want to talk about.
Right.
Yes, that's a problem, but it's about 40,000 people a year. It's tiny numbers. It's actually people sort of flying into airports and coming through. So that was a big betrayal.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's many. So let's go through them. I mean, there's lockdowns as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. He was disastrous in that as well. That's right.
he,
Yeah.
he was. Now that is again that is an issue that people don't talk about. It was what radicalized me. It's what got me out of my early retirement to come and do podcasting, because I was so irritated by that. It was such an affront that I had to speak out about it. And people don't ever talk about it because I think they're slightly embarrassed, because they spent 2 years walking around supermarkets with a cut up t-shirt on their face and standing on yellow dots, doing all the things. And I don't think they want to admit to themselves that they were made to look completely
Yeah.
stupid, but
Yeah.
they were
Exactly.
made to look completely stupid. So
Exactly.
that's in their minds as well. So what have we got? We got the weak Brexit. We've got the mass immigration. We've got the lockdowns. Oh yes, we've got the record tax and spend.
Hmm.
So tax and spend is at the highest point since the midst of World War II. So it is
Wow.
higher than it was under Tony Blair.
Wow.
And of course, we've had the massive debasement as well. When inflation is running at sort of 2 to 3%, the state's stealing your money, but it's
Mhm.
doing it slow enough
Yeah. Yeah.
that you could probably get a pay rise every couple of years, and it's not too bad. And you get a bit of seniority in your job, and it kind of smooths out. When it's 18% in a year, you can spot that something is a bit up.
It's a
So
cost of living disaster. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and it's very noticeable. And I mean, of course, I mean a lot of the international monetary system is run off the back of the dollar.
You're right.
So I mean, if you're not actually paying in dollars, it has a big effect. So I
Right.
think the UK, if it was a US state, it would be the biggest state in terms of population. It would be about Colorado in terms of landmass, but I mean, I think it would be the second poorest in terms of
Wow.
GDP.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
Wow.
there has been a very noticeable gap open up between us and you guys in terms of sort of living conditions and
Yeah.
salary and pay. In fact,
Wow.
we did a segment on our podcast recently where we just compared the sort of wages that you earn in Britain compared to a Bucky's manager. And a Bucky's manager felt sorry for us. He sent us a whole crate of goodies with a little note that said, "I'm rich and you guys are poor, so you should have this." So we got bags of Bucky's stuff all over the place in
Oh
here.
no.
So so basically, every reason for not voting Labour had just been comprehensively destroyed. So
Destroyed.
like, well, okay, well we're going to do it. So that's when zero seats came about, and the original concept of zero seats is, well, if we're going to have the uniparty, if we can make Labour completely own it,
Yes.
because
Yes.
what they want to do, and they do this in your country as well, they do it with woke in your country, is they
Yeah.
want to talk about relatively superficial issues. I'm not saying that people going in the wrong bathrooms and stuff isn't important, but it is in actuality quite a tiny issue that doesn't affect many people. But they want to argue about that all day long, so they
Right.
don't have to argue
Right.
about 34 trillion in debt,
Right.
or the fact that the US, I think it's spending something like 6.5 trillion and taking in 4.6 trillion in
Right.
taxes.
Exactly.
And you guys, and we're in the same position, but we're on the cusp of a debt spiral here, because debt is the same proportion as GDP. Your debt is 100% of GDP, and at that point, it's just okay. Well, which one is growing faster?
Right.
Debt is.
Right.
So where do you go? So they want to do all of that superficial stuff. So the original conception of zero seats is okay. Let's make Labour have to fully own it, and if they haven't got an opposition, they can't do the political games, and then
Exactly.
everyone will see how broken the established structure is, and then we can have a proper shake-up.
It's brilliant because you're bringing the uniparty to the fore. You're saying there
Yeah,
is no opposition. It's a
yeah,
single party. It's a single political class. Let's drop the veneer. Let's have it come to the fore. It's Labor. They if Cameron wants the Tories to be the new Labor, here you are. We're just going to integrate. It's going to be an official coalition government. We're just going to integrate you into that. That's the brilliance of the zero seats. I remember when I think it was right after I talked to you actually that Nigel Farage dropped the zero seats campaign in a speech he was talking about. So it's actually caught on. You guys are on the front lines of changing the UK and
yeah.
its political rhetoric. That was pretty impressive.
Yes, I mean that originally came from Peter Hitchens, brother of Christopher Hitchens,
Christopher, yeah.
who I know had more purchase in the US, but he's a political commentator. He's since rode back from it because, I mean, at his heart, he is still a Boomcon. So when it really gets down to it, he's gone back to the Tories now. But I mean, he made this argument and he was making it in previous years. That was then picked up and run and coined the zero seats by the man that you recently had an interview with, Neem Parvini. I know him as academic agent from his YouTube channel, a friend of mine. So he sort of coined this term. And here at Lotus Eaters, we picked it up and we really ran with it. And of course,
Yeah.
our meme lords have been doing. I don't know if you've seen the zero seats video. We took we took AI to generate a Conservative Party political advert where they basically said, look, we've been destroying you for centuries, and we're aiming for zero seats. I sent it to you guys.
I haven't. I gotta check that out. Well, obviously, we got the link down below. We'll all check it out now.
Yeah, so I mean, we've been really pushing that, but yeah, we have an opportunity here now. Actually, what happened just before Nigel Farage came back into the scene is, I believe you're also familiar with Tommy Robinson, who is very much a sort of populist figure here.
Yeah, very much so.
He held a massive rally in London, in Westminster Square opposite the Parliament, and it's not a particularly big square, but he got 35,000 people turn out to that, and another million people were watching it at home through online. Wow. And I was there and I was streaming from it, and I was just saying, look at the political energy that is here, that is going nowhere. Right. All of this is waiting to be tapped. Now, I don't know if Nigel saw that or not, but the next day, Nigel Farage stood up and said there was a lot of untapped political energy here, and we need to seize this. We need to take hold of this and run with it.
Yeah, yeah. Just to show people how dramatic this is, can you comment a little bit on your current Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak? Is he really on the brink of losing his seat?
So the answer to that is complicated because it's not quite red v blue. You can't quite look at the polls and say, okay, well, this much shift will take you here, because we've got we've got the Lib Dems and then we've got Reform, and so it is. I mean, we're doing an election night stream on the night of the election. Oh, actually, the guys have said to invite you to come on that. So if you want to dial in on election night, we would absolutely love to have you. But we're doing.
I would. That would be an honor.
Brilliant.
I mean, that would be an honor for me. That would be great. Thank you for that.
Well, we're going to be going from 7 o'clock UK time till about 3 a.m. So that will be, I don't know, whatever that is.
That'd be easy for me. Yeah, that'd be relative.
Something like your lunchtime to late into the evening. So that'd be brilliant. But yeah, it's a nightmare for us trying to work out what might actually happen, because it's not that red-blue shift. You've also got how much does the Lib Dems get, how much does Reform get. So it's almost impossible to work out how it splits, because in one individual seat they might say, okay, well, we want to do 0 seats, so we're going to lend our votes to the Lib Dems, and in others they might say Reform, and some they might get mixed messages and go either way. So it's very difficult to understand how they actually play out in the end.
Okay.
Rishi Sunak was parachuted into one of the safest seats in the country.
Okay.
So he shouldn't do, but because you've got this 4-way split, you never know what's going to happen in the night. Now, we've never had a British Prime Minister lose his seat, so it would be earth-shattering. But even if he doesn't, another thing I'm doing...
The very fact that it's that tenuous right now is itself stunning.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been running the numbers on all the seats, and the seats that the Tories probably are going to win, they're going to have majorities of a few hundred, maybe a couple of thousand. Now, to put this in perspective, when Rishi Sunak was handed his seat, that had a majority of 19,000.
Wow.
So
Wow.
every Tory seat, I mean, it is
Wow.
literally 0 seats is not impossible.
It's not impossible. You're not kidding. Yeah.
It
This is
probably won't play out that way, but it's actually not impossible.
that's why I just want to convey so much to our audience. You can't exaggerate how astonishing this upcoming election is, and the game changer, the way it's really a political earthquake in many respects. Is there any indication that reform is already pulling the Tories more to the populist right, or the Tories are they just going down as Tony Blair wannabes?
No. The lesson that the Tories learned from every single election is that we were too right wing.
Wow.
They learned that from Brexit. Like I said, Brexit. Okay, that clearly means that people want infinity Africans. It clearly means that people want higher tax and spend. The Tories will always draw the wrong lesson, and I think the Tories are going to have a little bit of an optics problem because, like I said, they have since 2005 handed out their safest seats to either diversity candidates to try and insulate themselves from the charge of being racist, because that's what that's what the left always throw at you. The left have a standard stock of attack lines, and one of them is racist. So to insulate from that for themselves, they got a whole bunch of diversity candidates in their safest seats, and they got the ultra sort of woke ones. So what happens when they're reduced to whatever it is, 50, 60 seats? Whether it's right or wrong, just optically, you're going to look at that Conservative Party, who are the party who gave us mass immigration, and people are going to be like, okay, there is potentially something wrong. The pros, whether that's right or wrong, on the lizard brain, people are going to look at that and they're going to think, okay, the party that gave us mass immigration does not perhaps represent me as much as they could. Now, I actually think this was supposed to be the war election. Before Nigel Farage came back in, it was all about, because Ukraine, even though it's not an obsession for us as the people, it is an obsession for the political class, the media class.
Yep.
And you can sort of tell this because Rishi Sunak came out with his conscription idea. Oh, gosh, so he wants to reintroduce conscription.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, and it's quite extraordinary because,
I mean, just the doubling down on stupid. It's just so unbelievable. They are literally occupying such a different cultural space. It's beyond belief.
But it's extraordinary because what are we going to be fighting for? I mean, history, heritage, nation. I mean, all of those things are being wiped away.
For Azovs, you'll be fighting for Azovs. That's what you'll be fighting.
Yeah, exactly. So that policy is extraordinary, and he actually went with a couple of options. He said either you can do military service, or you can basically give free labour to the NHS and other public service. So basically, it's die in a trench or wipe an arse. It's one of those two, which is massively unappealing. And then he's followed it up as well by saying, when he was asked, okay, how are you going to get people to do it? And he says, oh, well, we just take away their bank accounts if they don't do it.
Exactly. We'll punish them. Right. We'll debank them. Exactly.
So that is the election campaign that they were hoping to have. It's okay, how can we militarize the nation so that we can secure BlackRock, their mineral deposits in Russia? Because, I mean, the globalist game is to get rid of Vladimir Putin and put a Slavic Justin Trudeau in there, somebody who's compliant to Davos.
Right.
But it hasn't worked out that way. Instead, what's happened is Nigel Farage has managed to make it the immigration election. And that is the thing that is people, and it didn't take much because people were already upset with this, but he's got that way of cutting through that now the media can't ignore it.
Right. Oh my heaven. And it's so fascinating. Nigel does tap into that populist bent. He seems to be more comfortable at a pub than he is, in a lecture hall or something. Although he's quite the orator, he could do. There's no question. British tradition is quite is the standard.
Well, I mean, he's the only of the big politicians that can walk around in public spaces.
Right.
So all of
Right.
the rest of them, they go into very controlled environments. So Rishi Sunak, I mean, they all do this, but Rishi Sunak will go to a big employer. So he'll go to a factory where they make, I don't know, JCBs, and he'll
Right.
line up in front of the workforce. And the workforce there know fully well that if they embarrass the boss, their jobs are at risk. So they basically behave themselves. But none of
Right.
them would risk going for a walk down a British high street because they are all of them so hated. Nigel
Wow.
Quash can just walk down any street. He can walk
Yeah.
into any
Yeah.
pub. I mean, he can walk into any crowd. Yeah, you get the occasional left-wing
Yeah.
idiot
Yeah.
who throw a
Yeah.
milkshake at him or something like that. But I mean,
Oh,
he is welcome everywhere because he speaks to the interests that we have.
exactly. And there's a courage to that. It shows he's not afraid of the people. He loves the people. He's embracing the
Yeah,
people,
he's
and
of
that
the
there's
people.
exactly. Just a real quick on. I'm just curious on your thoughts on Keir Starmer. If I take it, he's going to be the next prime minister once Labor takes over. Do you see a new direction when it comes to Ukraine, or are they just pretty locked in with Biden and NATO?
Yeah, I mean, just to elaborate on Keir Starmer. I mean, the man has no personality. He has no charisma whatsoever. I mean, he is. I would expect that most of your viewers have no idea who the man is. Just
No,
imagine,
no,
just imagine the teacher at school that nobody would pay any attention to. It's him, right? So, and he,
that's brilliant.
he's coming in, and like I said, his vote share has actually gone down. He's going
Right,
to win this election with a smaller vote share than his predecessor
wow,
lost the 2017 election.
right.
Now, who is Keir Starmer? Keir Starmer is a globalist. He's a member of the
Mhm.
Trilateral Commission. I mean, there's this famous interview a while back where he said, "Would you rather spend time in Westminster or Davos?" And quick as a flash, he was like Davos. You know,
Davos in a heartbeat, sure. With a
he, he,
clicking
he, he
champagne and yeah, yeah.
Exactly. He's a globalist. But I mean, they've infiltrated into both parties. Now, you know what Trilateral Commission is. It's like a lot of these groups, Bilderberg groups. They're all set up in the post-war period to push for a one world government.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
and then in the 1980s, they stopped talking about that because they realized it was a bit unpopular. And we are expected to believe that they go along to these meetings every year because they just like the food. You know, we
And
don't.
they're worried about the environment too. That's
And that, yes. No, he's not globalist. Maybe he's Biden without dementia. He's somewhere along those lines.
right.
So is he going to change tact on Ukraine? No, he won't because
No,
he's part of the global structure.
right,
However, evidently, the Ukraine situation has not gone
right.
as it was originally intended to go. I mean, it has had some victories. I mean, it's taken out Germany for a start, which is in turn, yeah, yeah, and this thing, I have to remind viewers sometimes that
Wow,
you know
it's so true.
there is only so far that we can break from the US will, and I'm not talking about US. You know, I'm not talking about you, the people. I'm talking about the
Right,
government.
they're the
There's
political
only
class.
it's only
Yeah,
so far that we can break from the US because they will bomb us, and people push back on that. And I remember it was only 18 months ago since the US bombed Germany. They took out they took
yeah,
out Nord
right. The
Stream
Nord Stream. Yeah, yeah,
of course, taking out the German economy, what that does is
right,
it takes out the euro, which is the biggest threat to the dollar, which was
right,
very helpful at the time that the dollar share of global transactions was falling.
right,
So,
right,
but what it does do is it gives them an opportunity to take a fresh look at things, and if they want to, they can scale back. I suspect
right,
that's probably going to happen in November. When Trump comes in, it's going to give them the opportunity to backpedal on this. But no, Keir Starmer will do whatever the
whatever
US
the whatever
State
the
Department
dolts in
tells him to
BC
do.
want.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Unfortunately, yeah, Pax Americana will not be thwarted.
yes.
I know, Dan. This is absolutely fascinating. I'm so excited. As you know, I've told you my ancestors are from Britain. My grandfather came over as the first full time R&D researcher at Roman Haas, a German company in Philadelphia, and I've always been it's always been ingrained very deeply within me a love for our motherland and I am so excited to finally see some serious paradigm shifting politics going on in the UK, where the political paralysis was almost just it was so maddening for so long. It really looks like it's finally
it was going to be so
breaking.
dull, and now we are so hyped for our election stream that we've got coming up. I should mention, if anyone wants us to watch that, it's free to. You don't have to pay anything. It's free to watch on lotuseaters.com. So come along. Dr. Steve, please do drop in as a call-in guest at some point during the evening. But yeah, it's going to be so much fun because we're going to watch Tory minister after Tory minister getting wiped out. We're going to watch Tories go from 375 seats down to hopefully 0. I mean, it might be 50 or something. But
even if it's just a few dozen, that is practically 0. That is stunning, from 300 plus to a couple of dozen. I mean, oh my heavens!
And of course, seeing Nigel Farage get into Parliament, which he
Clacton, right? It looks like he's going to win it.
And that place has been controlled for so long. There has been no dissenting voices in there. It's basically just been 650 people who stand up and say the same thing. We're going to have George Galloway in there, who's very much on the left, but he's an independent thinker.
But a populist left, yep.
Populist left, exactly right.
Very anti-Ukrainian war and the like, very anti-Israeli war. You name it. I mean, if anything, he would be more almost like a populist right here in the States or something akin to that. Yeah.
Yes, perhaps. I mean, apart from on tax and spending, yeah.
You're right. No, yeah. And then very pro Islam Palestinian.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
We have some issues there, but.
And you can have Nigel Farage and hopefully a handful of Reform MPs, and they are going to be standing up and saying things like, maybe we shouldn't go to war with Russia.
Right.
Maybe we shouldn't go to war with China. Maybe we need to sort out, getting our own house in order. Maybe we need to build up our own energy security, our own farming security, our own manufacturing capabilities, rather than outsourcing everything to these places and then acting surprised when they start to achieve global hegemony. I mean, so yeah, it is going to be an absolute paradigm shift. It's going to reawaken politics in this country. I actually thought it was going to happen in your country, but of course Trump came along as effectively a third-party candidate and re-injected life into the GOP. But it could have been happening there if it wasn't for Trump.
It's so fascinating. I do think it's very similar. Trump is a third-party candidate to get a major party nomination, and then in parliamentary politics, you literally have a third party coming in and knocking out the main party that had such ascendancy for so long. It's astonishing. Dan, we'll have the links down below, but tell our audience how they can keep up with your amazing work, and especially in this lead up and the aftermath of these elections.
Yeah, so Lotus Eaters has a daily podcast that goes out Monday to Friday at 1 p.m. UK time, so whatever that is your time. It will be quite early, but I mean, we have a decent number of American viewers who enjoy hearing Brits complain about the state of the world. I've got my Brokenomics series, which is on the platform, where I look at broken political systems, economic systems, geopolitics, all that kind of stuff, and have some fascinating guests. Including, of course, Dr. Steve, who came on a recent episode and was absolutely superb. But the main thing I'm pushing, come along to the election stream, because it's going to be so much fun. It is really going to change things. And I just hope that once again, because, of course, Brexit foreshadowed Trump.
Exactly. I was just you stole my thunder. That's what we're thinking exactly.
I do apologise, sir, but hopefully that dynamic is going to play out once again. We're going to tee up the puck, and then you guys are going to knock it out of the park.
I love it. Another back-to-back political earthquake, just like in 2016. Absolutely. I still tell people. I mean, there's a small amount of us who are who are geeks about world politics, especially European politics. I could still remember where I was on June 24th, the morning of June 24th, 2016. I was in Atlanta, Georgia, at a conference, at a classical school conference, and the headlines on the newspapers in the where I was getting my coffee, I didn't think Brexit was going to pass. I didn't even stay up for it. I was like, there's no way it's going to happen. And when I saw Britain votes to leave the EU, I was on cloud 9 for the whole rest of the conference. So yes, let's hopefully we're going to have July the 5th. Would be
It's one of
similar.
those big things that wasn't meant to happen.
Yeah.
Just like Trump wasn't meant
Just
to
like
happen.
Trump. Yep.
These guys, they thought they had it all locked down, but the one thing
Yep.
they forgot about is that their populations are not going along with it. I mean, it's the stuff that you talk about. You talk about this brilliantly, but it's there is a populist revolt, and
There is a massive revolt.
Yeah, and it's getting harder and harder for them to keep the lid on this thing.
Dan, thanks so much for being with us, gang. Make sure you click on the link below, subscribe to all Dan's work. I couldn't recommend channels more than Dan's, and get a front row seat in these monumental, epical changes unfolding in real time in the UK. Astonishing stuff. Dan, thank you again. Let's have you back soon.
Oh, I'd absolutely love to. And best wishes to all your viewers. Hopefully we'll see you on the election night stream. It's going to be fun.
Absolutely. I'm honored to be on there. That'd be wonderful. Thank you so much for that.